have spoken, it would be impolite for me to add. Otherwise, I risk what the Ugandans say, cause of zina, washing dirty linen. But everybody is encouraging funding. Uganda Media Center is not self-accounting. I rely on subvention via the ministry. They decide what to give me against my budget of about 1.5 billion. When there is a cut, they choose what they give. For the last financial year and this one ending, I have been operating on just salary. And if it wasn't for the fact that I have lived long in government, and so I have some networks, even the little of which the little you see at the media center wouldn't be there, because I have to ask the army, intelligence, and so on to support some of the operations. I cannot even parent unless I beseech the permanent secretary, because the money given to me cannot parent of $13,000 a month in the center of Kampala. I am sure those of you who watch press conferences, press engagement of high-profile people, ministers, including the one of finance, sometimes you say, is this a mortuary? A dirty mortuary? No paint, no coat of paint, nothing. And because the people who manage finances, both in the ministry and the Ministry of Finance, it seems to me communication is not their priority. Their priority is somewhere else, and mainly because the media center doesn't generate revenue. So nobody is interested, except when the government is in crisis, to communicate. I would beg to stop here so that I don't continue to cause of zina.
Thank you.
I have the minister and the permanent secretary. They are good people.
Yes.
I will continue to engage them kimoyo moyo.
Thank you. Well, okay.
Be funded using resources from the TV tax, because a benchmark had been carried out with BBC and South African Broadcasting Corporation. How were they surviving? They were surviving from a tax that funds the national broadcaster. It's so unfortunate that we might be the only peculiar national broadcaster in Africa, if not worldwide, that is not directly funded by government. As we speak, you might be cognizant of the fact that UBC, we are a subvention, we are not even a vote. And I think that's where the starting point that I would want the committee really to, let's look at the root cause and not the symptoms. The root cause was from inception, I would say it was a stillbirth. We inherited debts from UTV, inherited debts from Radio Uganda, which we are still clearing up to today. UEB bills are with us. Some of you, you are young, you might not know even what UEB is. Uganda Electricity Broadcasting Board. Sorry, I'm so much into broadcasting. Yeah. So we inherited debt from UEB that was incurred by the Ministry of Information then, because Radio Uganda and the UTV were under the Ministry of Information. Now, when the idea was mooted that UBC could run on the same platform like the other national broadcasters that were benchmarked, they said, okay, fine, UBC become a self-accounting body. You'll be getting money from the TV tax. A company actually was even contracted from South Africa, I think by UCC. It wasn't even called UCC then, to come and collect that tax. But then there was a presidential directive, do not collect the tax. At that point, people did not address the bigger question. How is this newborn baby supposed to survive? So we started off with debts. We started off by incurring more debt. As I speak today, we've strived over the last 5 or so years. And I think the chairman today there's no other better person than him hearing this story, because he was my board chairman. He recruited me. He knows the actual pain that we have suffered all these years. So what happens? We incur debt. What Umeme does when it comes in place is well, you have failed to pay us our money. So what we shall do, all your sites shall be connected to Yaka. And every money that you load, 60% is knocked off to pay the old debt. We have been doing that for the last 6-7 years. Right now, the Umeme debt outstanding is about 6 billion. Yeah, that is part of the story. But the bigger picture, which I would really want the committee to interest, and we requested for an engagement as UBC to give you the total picture, because people have not appreciated the fact that as a national broadcaster, when we have national events, it's Independence Day, it's Heroes Day, we are in Kololo, we are in all the parts of the country. When we are transmitting that picture live, until the technology just came recently of doing the live view using the IP, the internet protocol, we were paying satellite hourly. Every hour would be $500. So as we are waiting and enjoying the entertainment of the traditional dancers, for us, the pain is, when is this function ending? And all that money accumulates. So we found ourselves now, like we have a debt with the satellite provider, which we have been servicing, but it got to a point, right now the debt is about 3.5 billion. It wouldn't be much money. I want to thank the minister and the PS. All efforts were done to make sure that the last World Cup that was that we managed to broadcast, government released money, 1.5 billion that was paid to FIFA, but that was a package that is even giving us the Africa Cup of Nations that is starting, and we're going to have all the matches, and we also have 4 other events, international events lined up, under 20, under 18, all those are in that package. But the satellite provider requested us to give a commitment, and we pushed the minister. Honorable Kabyanga here wrote to us a very nice letter to the provider. We are committing because the ICT committee has appropriated 24 billion. First quarter, if not second quarter, we are clearing you. As I speak right now, what UBC received is 3.4 billion out of 15 billion we were expecting. Out of the 3.4, knock off 1.5 that went to FIFA for the sporting rights. Sporting rights are very expensive. Many people might ask, but what happened in the past? We used to watch World Cup. We used to watch all this. That is in the past. Sports has been commercialized heavily. Even the World Cup, if those of you who are watching on the free-to-air platform that UBC was broadcasting, and that's what all national broadcasters in Africa had, we had less than half the matches. All the so-called juicy matches were left to the pay TV platform because that's how they make their money. So what am I saying here? The little that we were left with after knocking off the 1.5, then we struggle to pay salaries. Then whatever internally generated resources goes into struggling to keep afloat. Many media houses here will agree with me. Honorable Bagala was always with us. Our journalists always come on borders. When all the others are chauffeured in, branded cars. And people say, but why don't you have cars? You are government. The other request that we have already tabled to the Prime Minister is to allow us to, if resources come in, we want to leave the adage of government does not buy second-hand cars. We need to buy the cars that everyone here uses. But when it comes to the bureaucracy of procurement, government doesn't procure second-hand cars. We are getting a waiver. We have already talked to the Prime Minister. She's agreed that indeed, why do we buy one car that could buy 5 cars and do the same job? So the funding issue, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister and members, a national broadcaster worldwide is as good as a road infrastructure. You do not put road tolls on all the roads that we have made in this country to recoup the investment of the road. And unfortunately, when you look at the loop side of things, we are talking about mindset change. Honorable members, if we cannot address this issue of mindset change, then we shall continue only financing businesses that do not bring revenue to this country. Without getting into any attacks or whatever, all the pay TV stations in this country are smiling all the way to their capitals because we are donating money to them. You'll believe if you reflected on your own home consumption of TV. Most of us are on the pay TV platform because we want to watch the local stations. Yet, the infrastructure that was financed by government through UCC that put up the 18 sites, the digital terrestrial transmission sites, DTT sites, can make sure that at least 70% of the country can receive free-to-air signals of all the local channels. If the 18 sites that are up are facilitated, because of the 18 sites, every month we need 240 million shillings for umeme alone, before we talk about standby generators and all that. So we generate money, but then we recoup it in the system to make sure we are afloat. That's why no one day have you seen that UBC has been off air. But it is at a pain. So what I was saying, if the 18 sites are up and running, 70% of this country will be able to access free-to-air TV signals. Right now, the majority of people are all on the pay TV platform. So we are donating money to MultiChoice, to GoTV, to StarTimes, to Zook, to all these platforms that are charging us money. That money would be saved if we strategically invested in communication. And if we strategically invest in these communication platforms, the issues of mindset change. What are people watching on these other platforms? Are they watching Nigerian movies? Do they add value to our heritage? Do they inculcate values in our society, or it's just fun and entertainment? The other issue of national broadcasting, I mean, when you tune into BBC, I don't think you've ever tuned in and you had an advert for Omo, for Vim, for beer and all that. They don't rely on advertising. But tune into UBC, you'll see all the adverts. There are some that we cannot take as a national broadcaster because they are not in consonance with our editorial policy. So, Mr. Chairman, like I alluded to, I would really want to have an interaction with the committee where we present all the facts like Honorable Company has requested, because the truth of the matter is we need to rethink about the communication platforms in this country.
Thank you.
And the number one is the government platform. We do not only run TV channels, and that's the misnomer that some people have. When they hear UBC, you only think about TV. We run 11 FM radio stations around the country. The 11 radio stations around the country broadcast in at least more than 30 local languages. How best is it to communicate to our populace and not in their local dialect? When we're in Kasese, I know, Honorable Florence, you have complained several times. My minister calls me and says, but the signal of the radio is bad. We know the cause, but we are constrained. We have no resources. The last retreat we had, I think you'll agree with me, I talked with a lot of conviction. Like Honorable Haji was saying, that our minister talks with a lot of conviction. The ministry has fronted our case. The Parliamentary Committee of ICT has appropriated money. How do I feel to talk with authority?
So I think Winston.
Increase in uptake of services. So over the years, we've been observing an increase in uptake of services. We started with a focus on voice, but now the focus is on broadband. And to put it in context, also, it is worth noting that according to the UBOS abstract of 2021, the ICT sector contribution to GDP was 1.8%, and the ICT sector growth was 11.8%. I don't have with me the ones for 2021-22, but looking at how the sector has been performing over the years, that is what brings us to Save Vibrance. And one may look at the teledensity and feel like there is no growth in figures, but the teledensity is calculated based on the population. So whereas the uptake of services is growing, we also have a population growth. And also to put that in context, we have to note the percentage of Uganda's population that's below 18 years. And that is why, as a sector, we are looking at interventions of how to safely provide that category also with ICTs. We also note that we have a lot of innovation, and which we celebrate as a sector, that whereas government has prioritized innovation, this is one sector that provides a number of opportunities for innovation. And indeed, we've seen a lot of innovative services and applications coming in the sector. Regarding the aspect of coverage, yes, as a country, we are not yet at 100%. I'll go through various technologies. As a country, we are open. We have not limited ourselves to a particular technology, but as a country, we find, due to the history, whereas other people used to use fixed lines, we were disadvantaged in that respect, but we leapfrogged, and many of our people mainly use wireless. So when it comes to the 2G technology, which is what most people use for the small feature phones, we are at 99% coverage of population, but 78% coverage in terms of geography. And the reason for that disparity is the way the distribution of our population is. There are some areas that are not as populated as others. Now, when it comes to 3G and 4G, and someone may wonder what is the fuss, why do we keep talking about 3G and 4G? It's like using a straw to drink, say, porridge. If you use a very thin straw, you're going to take so much time to be able to finish your cup of porridge. The bigger the straw, the faster it is. So the same way with our technology, 3G is slower, 4G is faster. So as a country, to get most benefits, we'd want more people using 4G technology. But currently on 3G, which is the more historical one, we have 87% of the population that is covered and 53% geographical coverage. On 4G, we have 37% population coverage and 11% geographical coverage. Now, it's also important for us as a committee or as a sector to recognize that coverage does not translate into usage because of the various factors that have already been discussed. For example, the issue of devices. If you don't have a device, you can't connect to the internet. Or if you don't have a public facility that you can go to, you cannot connect. As a government, what are we doing? Yes, we want coverage across the country. Currently in the world, there's no country yet that has achieved 100%, but all of us are aspiring to get 100%. And we are doing it through two main ways. We are using the commercial, so we license the providers, and as the minister has already mentioned, there is now a 90% geographical, not population, geographical coverage obligation for the operators. So that, yes, they can go where the money is, but they also extend to some other areas that are not viable. Then as government, we are also intervening with the NBI investment that has already been mentioned, and also the Uganda Communications Universal Service and Access Fund, where what we have done is we know that there are areas where it is unviable because the revenues from those areas are too low compared to the cost of maintaining the masts or the communication services in those areas. So what we are doing is providing a subsidy to the tower companies so that they go into those areas, but they don't charge the rental they would have charged without the subsidy, which rental increases the cost to the operators. So this subsidy is to help reduce that cost and make it possible for these other operators to go in and provide services in line with their obligation. The minister, the chairman actually mentioned challenges that the operators are facing in respect of this. Yes, maybe before I go into that, it is also important for us to know that one of the reasons we have challenges in coverage are actually obstacles. Today there is a building, like now, as soon as I sat here, I can envisage Parliament is going to need additional infrastructure to make sure you have connectivity inside because of the thickness of the new building. So that kind of concrete wall affects penetration of some of the radio signals. So this is especially affecting areas like downtown Kampala and some of the other areas. Even hills and weird living trees can affect penetration of services. The signal waves going through. So this requires more enhancement. Unfortunately, the communities fear radiation because of all the myths that have been put out there, cancer, and all these theories that are out there. So there is, much as the population says they want coverage, and yet they need the masts to provide coverage, they don't want the masts in their localities because of the fears of the health reasons. And this has also impacted the ease of getting permission, the permits that the chairman was speaking about from NEMA, KCCA. So we have significant delays because of that pushback from different communities to be able to get permits. In some sites, we have sites that are reported to have been 300 days before getting. Yet our community says, we want coverage, or a member of parliament will report there is no coverage in the area. But they can't put connectivity in the place if the permission has not been granted. We also have, for example, in Gulu, where the civil aviation issue is again impacting the kind of authorization that can be granted. You want the towers to go high, but because of the airport that's being built, that authorization cannot be granted. Wildlife authorities, another one, the minister has spoken about the obligation to take to the park. All of us trying to make sure we protect the environment. There is again that concern. So the cost of setting up a mast in the park being more expensive than that of setting up in Kampala, yet the economics is such that it is us as a country that stand to benefit. However, we thank that our colleagues did hear the cry of the different stakeholders and have again since addressed this. The schools that have benefited from the ICT infrastructure, yes, that will be provided. And to the shadow minister, in respect of when people make mistakes vis-a-vis holding the media houses accountable, Uganda Communications Commission licenses the media houses. So we do not go after the journalists even when they make mistakes. We go after the media houses because it's the media houses that we have licensed. However, I think the reason why the chairman was asking about the Media Council, because the Media Council regulates the journalists. And we've been having this discussion with the journalists. They brought the concerns to our attention in terms of their welfare and the treatment by employers. And we have made significant progress in that respect. Initially, we had aspects about them not even being contracted or having any relations. And that at least has improved in terms of making sure that the respective licensees are required to have formal arrangements with their employees. Yes, we can have freelance, but even a freelance should have some kind of formal commitment to know their expectations. And then regarding how they address the operators, again, we've also addressed the National Association of Broadcasters and the Rural Broadcasters Association in respect of their membership. Yes, we know that right now, globally, the broadcasting industry is suffering the impact of technology change. So you will find that many are struggling. For many who look at the broadcasting industry as lucrative, traditionally they depend on advertising. Now with technology, you find that a lot of advertising has shifted and is being done on social media and all these other platforms. So this has taken away revenue from the broadcasting houses. And with them then left so many, because we have an open market as a country, and they are competing for the same pot. Some of them are not able to attract the necessary advertising to keep them in business. And that is why now we see some of them struggling to be able to survive in the sector. And what we are looking at is it might not be sufficient to only intervene at the broadcasters level. We have, as a country, to set up an ecosystem that enables our journalists in such instances to be able to move on and also address the developments that are in the creative industry. This actually also extends to those who are selling content to the broadcasters. So we have to address it in a holistic manner rather than only in the respect of journalists. I normally tell the journalists that, by the way, when we are talking about journalists, even the cleaners in those organizations need to be paid. So it's about addressing all persons in the same industry. Mr. Chairman and members, with that I submit.
Thank you very much. UBC or Minister? UBC? All right.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable Members. UBC's story dates back to the time when UBC was formed in 2005 by the Act of Parliament.